Welcome everyone to the Proven Knowledge Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Church. I'm a music producer from Northeast Ohio. I began this weekly interview series to give you different perspectives from artists, producers, engineers, and other individuals in the music industry. In each episode, we touch on not only what has helped the person succeed, but we also touch on what has shaped them into the person that they are today. I hope you're able to gain some real proven knowledge from the show, and that it helps elevate you on your own journey to success as well. Let's get into it. Going on, everyone. Welcome to episode 242 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Today I welcomed artist, Grammy-nominated songwriter YawnyBlew back to the show. We had him originally in the summer of 2023, back when he was still living in LA. And this week I wanted to get him on for a catch-up episode, and this to me was one of the more interesting catch-up episodes that we've had, because he described the different changes he's gone through the last couple years. Most notably, like I said, he's no longer in LA, he moved back to New York. He talks about kind of shifting away from songwriting, focusing more on his brand and creativity as an artist, putting out more collaborations with his close friend Amir. He talked about putting out 2 different albums with him, both of which were scouted by a sync agency for film and TV opportunities, which I thought was a great thing. And he also talked about his current position working for the company Meta, doing different work with music and their social media platforms, which I think is awesome. And really just what he described in this episode was, artists and really just musicians in general, being able to shift avenues and pursue different ways of making their dreams a reality. I think a lot of the conversations we have on this podcast focus on that, not being so gridlocked in on the traditional artist dream, but realizing the different pathways that we have now and the power that we have as independent artists, especially, to create different revenue streams for ourselves and just be able to thrive as individuals and artists as well. And I think he is definitely doing that in real time. Just the progress he's made in his journey is super inspiring. And I think this episode is going to inspire a lot of you as well with the overall message. So shout out to YawnyBlew for joining me again this week. I'm going to keep supporting his work. And without further ado, let's get into this one. All right, so welcome everyone to episode 242 here on the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Today is another returning guest, Grammy-nominated songwriter, artist. Had him on the show in 2023, I think the summer of 23. Everybody, welcome back YawnyBlew to the show. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks again for having me back.
Yeah, no problem. And I know we talked about it because I think you even had reached out to me like in the fall of 23 when you put out your project with Amir. And you were really excited about that. And so I think it's going to be cool to kind of catch up today about the music that you've been making and all the things you've been doing. But before we get into it, kind of give a brief reintroduction for those that might not have heard that first episode, who you are, what you do, all that good stuff.
Yeah. My name is YawnyBlew. I'm an artist, music development expert, songwriter, whole nine. I don't know. Yeah. Podcaster as well. I started podcasting a little bit after you and I chatted, I think that fall. So added that to my list, and
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's dive into that, because I think I did see that you had started the show yourself. So tell me more about that, because I haven't had the chance to check out the show yet, but I definitely want to give it a listen. So how did that kind of become a thing for you?
Yeah, so I'm hosting 2 shows right now, kind of simultaneously, and the inspiration came from working with one of my collaborators, Mike Brown, who is the host of the Art of Letting Go podcast. And just seeing the work that he does and the way that he's able to facilitate the kind of conversations that he wants to make around his art inspired me to do something similar. So Amir and I, we've done 2 albums together. We decided to do a podcast around the work that we did together, which tends to censor marginalized voices and plus-size queer artists. So that's called the Bigger Than Our Dreams podcast. And then at the top of this year, of 2024, me and Mike Brown actually started a podcast called The Creator's Toolkit, which is basically just a podcast where we talk to other artists, people like yourself, different people that we see doing cool stuff, and just starting to share the knowledge and tools that we all use to sustain ourselves as creatives. Our first season was focused on merch, so we talked to designers, artists who've created different merch lines, people outside of music that have used merch as a way to develop their brands further. So yeah, that's kind of been my podcast journey, and it's been a lot of fun. It's allowed me to really take control of the conversations around my output, which is primarily music. So that's been great.
That's incredible. Well, congratulations on both the shows.
Thank you.
Because that's super awesome. And it sounds like they both are really, doing things that are going to help a lot of other people as well. And I think that's the main point of doing shows like this, is to give back. And it's a way even outside of music, because I always say that like songs can help people, but I think conversations can help people on a much deeper level. And it's nice to be able to do that and to give back in that way. So I think that's incredible. And I'm definitely going to have to give a listen to both shows. So I think that's awesome. And, as far as like balancing that with everything else you have going on, because, I do one show and I feel like I am always kind of having to balance that with music and everything else I'm doing, working with other people. How are you balancing like two shows mixed with everything else that you're doing on top of it? Because that's a lot.
It is. Well, the shows are both kind of on hiatus. Like I'm in between seasons for both. So I was able to kind of get like one-off episodes the last couple of months, just based on things that I had going on. So I did an episode with Amir when we dropped our second project back in the middle of last month, in the middle of November. And then Mike and I did like an end of year recap. So I kind of tap in with them as I can. I see them sort of like the way that like a Nicki Minaj does like a Queen's Radio or something like that, where I've established a brand, and when I have time, I'll do full seasons. But in between, I just tap in as opportunities to promote my own stuff. Because as you know, with your own show, it's like, when you need to promote something, you have your own platform now. You can just come to your show and do it. So that's kind of what I've been establishing.
Yeah, and I think that's the best part about being able to run your own platform, is that you can kind of make the rules. You know what I mean? When you're hired in with someone else, or you're on somebody else's show, you're kind of on their terms. You know what I mean? So it's a lot harder to kind of balance it with everything else you're doing. But having that freedom is super, super important. So like I said, once again, congrats on that. I think it's incredible.
Thank you.
And yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to tap in there. As far as like music and the artistry is concerned, what do you think has been the biggest change you've had to overcome, or really just change that you've gone through in the last like couple years since we spoke? Could be creatively or just maybe in life in general.
It's been a little bit of all of it. I mean, to give you the abridged version, I think you and I chatted when I was still living in Los Angeles. I was in the middle of transitioning out of LA. I think maybe was in like my last week there when we spoke, and did some traveling for a bit, and ended up back on the East Coast in New York, New Jersey, and was essentially the last 2 years I've been trying to pivot away from songwriting as my main career, my main sort of goal, because I was at odds with a lot of what was going on in the industry, and I know we covered some of that in our last chat. Just a lot of the things that, you're fighting against these massive machines that a lot of times aren't created for songwriters to thrive or for artists to thrive. So I was trying to find other ways to like, how can I still create music? How can I still help artists? So I ended up getting this role at Meta, where I'm essentially developing music for their various platforms. And it's been like the biggest like dream come true, because I get to write all day, which I love. I've always been a songwriter. I've always been a music journalist as well. So I get to write a lot of internal stuff for them and their music collection, but I also get to work with artists to develop the music. And that's changed my life, because, I mean, for the first time ever, I'm actually making music 24/7, full-time. It's my day job. It's what I do after work. And I didn't know jobs like that existed. But I take that back. I knew jobs like this existed, but I knew that I would have to search really hard to find it. And I spent like a year and a half just applying for everything, every label, every tech company, every social media app, just looking for anything that said music. And it's been really cool. So that's a long way to answer your question. But essentially now, like I said, I get to work on music all day at work. And then in my spare time, I'm still developing music for myself as an artist. And now that the sole pressure isn't on my music to make me successful or to help me break or to help me maintain the bills, my music has gotten so much more freer. Like I've been able to just kind of do what I want. So that's been the biggest change for me as an artist, which of course is impacted by the personal changes of moving back east and getting a new job.
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of different things have gone on for sure.
Whole new world.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a positive change though, for sure, in all aspects. So that's incredible, and I kind of feel the same. I've really noticed that the last couple of years that just having other sources of income can even help, like you said, take the pressure off of your creativity.
Yeah.
Because I think the biggest thing is like everybody is chasing that dream of just like doing the whole artist thing full time all the time, and that's the only thing they want to do. But I think if you're putting so much pressure on yourself to where it's like it's becoming almost like hell to be an artist and just pursue that as the full thing. It's like you got to ask yourself, do you really want to go through that when you could just have something else to kind of fund what you're doing? Then it's gonna, like you said, it's a freeing feeling, because then it allows you to create without the pressure of like, I gotta make this something that is gonna give me a super big return. And obviously, there's not always a guarantee you're gonna get that return. And it kind of just forces you to create in ways that don't feel natural, I think.
100%.
Yeah. So I agree with that in a big way, and I think like what you've been able to get to where you're at now is like where I think a lot of people are like trying to get to, as far as shifting out of the old mindset of, like you said, the industry and kind of how things used to work. As far as like that, it's like now you're doing these things, you can power your own career and your own brand and what you're doing. So again, that's just like the podcast. I think that's a great thing. So congrats.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's been really when I think about what my focus is these days when it comes to creativity and my output, and why I like chatting with people like you, and why I like create so many outlets to share, is because I was so tunnel vision on a certain aspect of being an artist, which is typically the version we see on TV. I'm a product of making the band growing up, and I just thought like you had to go audition for a show or get discovered or put a song on SoundCloud or do whatever.
Yeah.
And that does work for a lot of people, and it's incredible. And then there's no shame to that hustle. But there are also like working class musicians that like do really well and make really cool stuff, and they're not, living the made for TV version of this, of like, I had to move to another state and sleep on the floor. And it's been really cool to tap in with them, because like I said, I was in LA when you and I last spoke. I had moved there to pursue music, and I was so locked in with that version of like, let's all just do whatever we can to get to the studio. If we got to share an Uber and share a sandwich, and we're going to figure it out, we're going to get this placement. So now on the other side of that, I'm literally every day working with like world-class musicians who literally punch in and punch out, and they're happy, they have sustainable careers. So I've been trying to do my best to bring awareness to these types of jobs and opportunities, because they may not be as sexy as, like I said, I posted a song to SoundCloud when I was half asleep and got 1 billion streams. Yeah. But I think they're just as respectable and more sustainable. So I'm trying to, scream into the rooftops of like, hey, I think there are way cooler ways for us as artists to sustain and still make really cool stuff. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hey there, hope you're enjoying the episode so far. I just wanted to take a quick minute out to let you know about a couple different ways that you can support the podcast. One of the ways is by clicking that support the podcast button within your streaming platform. That is if you want to be a monthly supporter of the show. You can contribute either 99 cents, $5, or $10 a month. So that's the first way, and that's the more traditional way that we've had now for the last couple years. The other method that we actually just recently introduced is from our good friends over at Ko-fi. Ko-fi is a virtual tip jar. We have set our limit to a minimum of $10, but you can go make one-time, one-off donations. So if you visit ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast, you'll be able to donate. And all these different forms of donation go towards getting new guests every single week, getting potential sponsors on board to do giveaways, and overall just making the show better for you guys. So if you want to do that Ko-fi link, it's ko-fi.com/the Proven Knowledge Podcast. Otherwise, again, look for that support the podcast button in your streaming platform if you'd like to be a monthly supporter. And I just want to say thank you guys for your contributions. And without further ado, let's get back into the episode. And you said you're working with Meta doing a lot of this stuff. And obviously that's huge company, has worldwide reach. So has that kind of opened your eyes to like anything that you weren't aware of, maybe on the tech side of things, or maybe just like the way that companies like that view artists and music and its role in like media and social media and things of that nature?
I think it's confirmed a lot of things for me. I think we know as creatives that music, it's a universal language.
Hmm.
It is one of the most powerful things on the planet, even though a lot of a lot of traditional ways that the music industry runs doesn't encourage that, doesn't encourage paying songwriters or paying artists, but there's a lot of money in music, and it is super important to products, super important to branding. It's the voice for a lot of companies, and yeah, I think the biggest thing to open my mind to is I think it's validated skills that I didn't know I was developing as a songwriter, because when I was just a songwriter by name, that's all I was there to show up and put words to melody and record a demo at best, or maybe cut backgrounds, but that was kind of it. But I didn't realize that on the back end of that, through my own output as an artist, through helping other artists develop their identity and their branding and stuff, I was learning how to do branding, I was learning how to do marketing, I was learning how to do copywriting, writing one sheets, and writing song descriptions and stuff like that. I was learning all these skills that being a songwriter didn't really benefit, because nobody wanted any of that. But coming into another world where it's like, oh, you can do that, that's cool, we need a one sheet for this song, or we need a marketing plan for this song, or this product needs a sonic identity. And like, I didn't know what sonic identity was, but every time I sat down with an artist and I spoke to them, and I would pinpoint things like, oh, this artist is from Texas, we should tap into like sounds from Texas, or whatever that is, or this artist is a big Star Wars fan, we should tap into themes of like sci-fi. That was building a sonic identity, and I had no idea. So when I got to this side of it, and they're like, this game, we need to figure out what this game sounds like, and I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. Been doing that for years for artists. So that's been the biggest things that it's helped me realize, is like, oh, I've got all these other skills that are really valuable that weren't always needed in the places that I was initially in.
Yeah. And I think that's how you're kind of moving to the next chapter of your life that's exactly where you need to be too, because without putting in all the work that you did, you would have never had the tools necessary to get to where you are now with this position. Right. Or if you did, you probably wouldn't have had that knowledge to apply those skills in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just goes to show that like everything happened exactly how it was supposed to get you exactly where you need to be. So that's awesome. That's incredible.
It's been a lot of fun, man. I'm telling you, like, my biggest thing coming out of this year has been trying to find more ways to tap in with creatives that are looking for a pivot, and just kind of telling them like, hey, have you tried this? Have you tried this? Have you looked into this? Just because I know people that are committed to certain versions of their career, of this career of being an artist, people that are committed to certain versions of being an artist will not understand that there are other ways to do stuff.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to like scream it from the mountaintops, like, hey, let's try something different.
Yeah.
Let's do something different.
And I think people need that too, because it's a much larger scope than I think anybody realizes. And the amount of avenues that there are to do these things is incredible. So,
man, everything has music to it. Man. Yep. Every single thing. I mean, video games is wall-to-wall music. Any social media app that you're on, you're listening to music constantly through the content, but also if you refresh your screen, it makes a sound. If you get a message in app, it makes a sound. Like, somebody has to design all of that. Sound designers, and we're producers, but sound designers, So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So shifting to your music and what you've been doing, like you said, in the last couple years, or the last year and a half, you've done 2 albums now with Amir. And I remember you talked about how important it was meeting Amir, starting to work with him. So tell me about both the projects, since we haven't really talked since those dropped. Because I think when we first talked, you guys were like finishing the first project. Like it was almost done. It was getting ready to be put out. But now, like you said, you just dropped a new one in November as well. So tell us about like what it's been like the past like year and a half, you guys working together, collaborating, and coming out with these projects.
So the first project that we did together was really just a passion project. Like, we, as I'm sure you've experienced, like you connect with somebody creatively, and you're like, oh, this is dope. Let's just keep making stuff. And we had that synergy. So we made this first album that we're really proud of. It was one of my first albums where I was able to just be more authentic as far as like my identity as a Black queer person, and just putting a lot of that into my music. And one of the goals in the back of our mind with the music that we were making was that we wanted to target sync agencies and opportunities in sync, which is music for television and film, video games. We were very intentional about that. So literally a month after the album was out, the first album's called Dream Big. A month after that, this company called Alibi Music reached out and was basically like, hey, love what you did with Dream Big. Do you have any B-sides or anything that you didn't use that you'd want to partner with us on? Because they are an agency, a label that works specifically with television and music, and with television and film and commercials and stuff, which was like, oh, that's exactly what we wanted. That's why we created this project. So we were like, yeah, we might have a couple of B-sides. So we started digging through, and we got through 1, 2, 3, and then we were like, hey, do you guys want like a full album? And they were like, sure. Like, all right. So we ended up fleshing out a second album together, but for them. And that album is called Bouncy and Pretty, and that dropped in November. So the two albums are basically like, I won't call them a part 1 and part 2, but they are very much intertwined. One is B-sides from the first one, but specifically released for television and film now and through a label. So that was my first label release. It was like, definitely the most supported I've ever felt in an artist release. It was a lot of fun. We got to work with a publicist and just being on label calls about like cover art and playlisting and stuff. And it was like, oh, okay, like, it's crazy. The moment I stepped away from songwriting and being an artist in the system came and was like, hey, here's this great opportunity to actually do it without all of the headaches. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, me and Amir, we are, really great friends, really great collaborators. So being able to do these two projects together so close was cool. And we got some other stuff coming up, but and I'm enjoying the come down of like this basically like a 3-year sprint of like meeting somebody and just cranking out all this music with them, and now just being able to sit down and see what happens, see where these songs end up. I'm super excited.
Yeah, and being able to look back at the progress and all the things you guys did is awesome, and I imagine very fulfilling. And that sounds like a super organic way for it to happen too, because like you said, I think we do a lot of like work just reaching out, pitching ourselves, trying to get connected with certain people, but to have them come to you, like you said, that's a big deal. Especially for sync, because I know sync is like it's a world that a lot of people want to get into, but it is pretty difficult to get syncs, because a lot of people are competing for those spots, and to be able to do it. And I've always heard that when you get the first one, it becomes a little easier to keep getting them. Is that true or not? How do you feel about that?
So I'm two sides of it. So my career has kind of always been sync or sync adjacent, because I started writing for Empire, which is a television show. So it wasn't necessarily sync at that point. It was songs specifically for the show. But then after that, I got a couple of syncs through co-writes for other artists. And I always would think like, once I'm in the system, I can just have a point of contact, and my point of contact would always disappear or like stop responding. So that was why I decided when I met Amir and just realized how much our music fit in that world, I figured, let's do this as artists, because maybe as the artist, I'll have more control versus the songwriter. And with the Alibi thing, it's still super early, so hopefully it's a little bit different. But as a songwriter, I definitely struggled to latch on to whatever the wave is when I would get those syncs. Like I would always think I could get one, and then maybe they just keep calling, and like it doesn't work that way. But it is super competitive, as you said. And I think after COVID, so many artists, when we had to just sit still and try to figure out other things to do, sync just became such a clear avenue. Like everything was on TV now. Like all we could do was sit home and binge watch, and you're seeing how Lizzo's song took off through sync and all this stuff. So it's super competitive now, but yeah, I don't know. I'm hoping for a different experience on the artist side, but as a songwriter, I definitely struggled to latch on to it. I appreciate the wins that I did get.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. You can't get discouraged either, because it can be discouraging when like the opportunity is there and then you miss out, or like they change the brief or whatever they want to do. So it's like you get these close calls and then it falls through. A lot of people will get discouraged and not even pursue it anymore. It's just like you got to just keep going, because you'll land something eventually. You just got to keep at it and keep going, just like anything else.
I think the biggest thing I've been telling people that I've been connecting with is to be as creative in your pursuit of opportunities as you are in your music. Like the same energy that you sit down to every day to make a song, apply that to your pursuit of opportunities. And even if it's just as simple as like trying something different every day, like, every day you don't have to go bang on the same wall or knock on the same door. But you get creative with your pursuit, but you find different opportunities. So Sync is a great one. Like I said, working with these tech companies has been really cool to see just how many places are developing sonic identity and need people who understand music to sit there and work through it with them. There's so many cool opportunities. It's just about looking for them or being creative enough to like create them.
Yeah.
Like actually invent these roles and invent these opportunities. So
yeah, and staying persistent, big thing. Yeah, for sure.
I think persistent. I think in a healthy way, because I can say for myself in the past, I have had some very toxic persistency. I don't know if that's a thing. I just made it up.
Yeah.
But I think there is a thing of like being able to take a step back and understand, like, am I being consistent just for the sake of, or is there actual productivity in what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with pivoting. Be consistent, but also like be open to pivoting, because I've seen the coolest things happen when people like take a break or just look in a different direction.
Yeah. Changes your perspective, for sure.
Changes your perspective. Yeah. I think you get refreshed. If you are a person that you're meant to go down that path and like that is your path, at least giving yourself fresh energy. Like I remember I'd always take like a month off every 6 months in LA. I'd come back to New York for like a month and recharge. And I'd come back and like plow through like a month's worth of sessions and like get some of my favorite songs done. But it was because I would take that time to reset. Mm-hmm. And in those moments, I would get fresh ideas of like, let me try this out when I go back, or let me reach out to this person, or let me look at it. Let me look for this opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Having the downtime is a big thing. Gotta do that for yourself.
Balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything that's coming up? Because we're obviously about to begin the new year. By the time this episode drops, it'll be February, I believe. So is there anything in 2025 that you're super excited about? Anything that's in the works that you want to reveal?
Nothing specifically yet. I think this year I took a lot of time to recharge. I spent most of my year focusing on the album with Alibi, but in the back of my mind, I've been preparing things that I want to do next year. In my heart, I want to say that I'm going to release something every month next year. We'll see if I'm gonna claim it on here. This comes out in February.
Yeah.
February. Whenever you people hear this, there'll be a song out in February. We'll see.
Nice.
I haven't released in January. I can't talk about yet, but I'm planning on at the very least doing a release every month next year. But outside of that, I think my biggest goal is going to be to figure out how to create more projects that can be used for branding and marketing. So really partnering with companies to figure out like what they need, and being able to structure projects around that and being able to work directly with them, as opposed to like waiting for like a sync agency or an opportunity. So that's something I'm putting energy towards for next year. And hopefully we'll see that come to fruition.
Yeah. That sounds like an awesome next step, honestly, in the journey. So I'm definitely going to be excited for the music too. And is there anything else you want to leave us with, and any final words of wisdom before we get out of here?
Man, I don't know. I think for any creatives watching this, I would just say, the world needs good music now more than ever. I think, what do they say? There's like over 1 million songs that come out every day on Spotify now. And, I think the best stuff still cuts through. So for anybody out there that's creating, that is inspired, just like, make the stuff you love, no matter how weird or niche or whatever it sounds like. I think now more than ever we have to be as self-indulgent as possible as creators, because we need unique voices and unique stories. So that's what I want to give to people. Like, make the most you art possible.
Yeah, that's all we can do at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. Well, man, that's all I have for you today. Again, thanks for coming back on the show. I'm going to be checking out everything you got coming up, and congrats on everything you're doing already, man, because I think it's incredible and it's inspiring to me, and I know it's going to inspire a lot of other people too. And, you ever want to stop back for a part 3, the door's always open. So thanks again.
Amazing. Of course. Thank you, man. I appreciate everything you're doing. And like I said, I think you're doing really amazing work. So creating this platform, just seeing the way that you promote yourself, your music, your brand, you are one of those people to me that is doing and taking the alternate routes and trying different things. So like, it's great to see you succeeding, and I hope that people understand how much work you're doing. And, just know that like there's a million ways to get to where we want to go, and we just have to be open-minded and trying different stuff out. So
thanks everyone for listening today. That was episode 242. We'll be back this time next week. As always, hit that support button on your podcast streaming platform if you'd like to send any funds. And feel free to leave us that 5-star rating if you enjoyed today's episode. And as always, tune in every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time to twitch.tv/AnthonyChurch24 for more exclusive and in-depth content. But until next week, we'll see you then. Thanks as always for listening.